In 1978, the Pope allowed a group of scientists to come in and have access, total access to the shroud, and do a bunch of tests to try to figure out everything they could about this mysterious piece of cloth. So there were 50 scientists, and they were given 120 hours of access. Now, this project was called the Shroud of Turin Research Project, otherwise known as STURP. So I guess the U comes from the second letter in Turin. So the Shroud of Turin Research Project, STURP, as I will call it from now on. Okay, so 50 scientists, and they had 120 hours of access. Now, I've seen interviews of a lot of the scientists that actually did this, and they talk about they were all flown out to Italy. And so they talk about the night before they had access to start looking at the shroud and working on the shroud. They talk about that they were all sitting in a pub together in Italy, sharing some beers, drinking some beers, and they were laughing about the whole thing because they assumed that it was a hoax. They assumed that they would be able to very quickly, these are scientists after all, and they assumed that they would be able to very quickly determine, hey, this is a fake, it's a forgery, and maybe after, half a day. And so they were laughing about the fact that they all were going to enjoy a free trip to Italy. So they started working on the shroud, doing all of the tests that they had planned to do. Here's a picture of them. We're looking at the shroud. There's the shroud. They actually were able to handle it and do all kinds of tests. And what do you know? They spent 120 hours working on this. And at the end of the 120 hours, then they took all of that information and then they studied it for another 3 years. They still could never figure out how the image was made on the cloth. They could not determine that it was a hoax. In fact, I think I know a lot of them, after all of this study, they believed that it was real. So here's the statement that they submitted, that they put out in 1978, after they concluded their 120 hours. This is what they said. We can conclude for now that the shroud image is that of a real human form of a scourged, crucified man. It is not the product of an artist. Okay, so it's a real man. It is not a painting, which is what everybody assumed before. The blood stains are composed of hemoglobin and also give a positive test for serum albumin. So the blood on the image is actual human blood. The image is an ongoing mystery, and until further chemical studies are made, perhaps by this group of scientists or perhaps by some scientist in the future, the problem remains unsolved. Wow. Okay, so get this. After all of their study, they came in expecting it to be a hoax. And instead of finding out that it was a hoax, they were all confounded. It was more of a mystery than ever. They had no idea how the image got on this cloth, but they know it is actually a real man. Somehow this image came from a real man who was crucified. The blood is real. And this is absolutely not a painting. So it was quite a mystery. And so it was their findings that was portrayed and explained in the Silent Witness documentary that I saw in 1978, explaining all of their findings.